Hello everyone and welcome to another special episode of Market Talk, and this is in association with Hobart again. Now, as part of Hobart's big conversation, Catering Insight has been reaching out to the UK dealer community, and one of the themes that we discussed was after sales and service, so we're going to be concentrating on that today. So with us today, we have Ian Munro, who is the Business Development Director of Hobart UK's Equipment Division. And we have Paul Gilhooly, who is the Sales Director of Bratt Brothers Catering Equipment. Dean Broadbent, who is the Managing Director of Miller's Catering Equipment. And Nick Place, who is the Sales Manager of Advantage Catering Equipment. So welcome everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. So I'm going to kick straight on with the questions. So the first one on the roster today is, what are the ideal attributes of a catering equipment supplier's after-sales offering? So as the supplier representative on this panel, Ian, I'm going to start with you.
Okay, well, obviously, Emily, I think after sales, it's very much about staff training. I think we have a lot of issues around operations, making sure that the product and the staff know how the equipment works. So, I mean, Hobart offer actually life cycle or lifetime training. So, not many manufacturers do give that support. Obviously, it's not a weekly offer, but it is something that we understand that customers' staff change, particularly at the moment. There might be high levels of staff turnover. So we're there to support the dealer and support the customer with training and making sure that the equipment's being used. Obviously, we would emphasise that maintenance is a key part of the after-sales part, and the customer must recognise that, if they're not maintaining their equipment, then it's like any piece of equipment. If it falls over, it's the piece of the engine room that they need to work daily and that they gain their revenue from. And if they don't treat it in the same way, then it's always going to have an impact. And obviously from us, we can also add some culinary support and be there after and support the dealer. So I think it's making sure the customer really understands the equipment, it works, and the equipment that he's purchased fits his needs, and that we're there to support them and the dealer.
Right, yeah. So from the other side of things, from a dealer's perspective, what would you guys like to see from a supplier in terms of their after sales? Dean, I'll start with you.
I think for us, Claire, the most important thing is probably speed of response, and that needn't necessarily be speed of fix, because often, we can undertake some of that work ourselves, but it's really, we're kind of the middle of the chain, aren't we? Because we've got the customer who's the end user, we've got the manufacturer who's built the thing, and for us, getting stuck in the middle a little bit, it's all about speed of response and availability. Because if we don't get that from the manufacturer, then frankly, it kind of reflects badly on us. We're the ones that are typically then managing the customer and then the manufacturer. So there's quite a lot of inefficiency that gets driven into our business as a result of a lack of speed of responsiveness or availability. I think typically the accuracy that we get back is pretty strong. I think to Ian's point, the manufacturers are well trained. I think they're credible in how they answer. I think our biggest consideration is just making sure that we can have access to those guys quickly so that we can feed back quickly to our customer. That for me, I think is probably the key attribute and the key feature of perhaps what we don't have right now, particularly under the circumstances. Everybody's struggling with staff. I understand that. Work from home, I understand that. But nonetheless, that doesn't solve the problem. The customer's still waiting for someone to get back to him, perhaps, with an answer to a query.
Right, yeah. Paul, would you agree with those sentiments? Do Bratt Brothers want to rely on their suppliers for after sales?
We work in tandem with them. I agree with what Dean and Ian said there. A couple of other things I'd like to add, if I may. Things will go wrong, so it is after the sale. So spares availability is a key thing. We know that spares aren't going to be available forever and a day. There will be a cut-off time when spares become obsolete, but there should be a reasonable time. There's an expectation of the client that if something goes wrong, it could be fixed within, if they've had it 6, 8, 10 years and they have maintained it and looked after it, etc. The other critical element for us is the information that's available in terms of tech support or technical information support. That's key, that it's available digitally, but also in a human way. We welcome opportunities from suppliers like Hobart to train our engineers, so that when it runs out of its warranty period and goes into preventative maintenance plan, for instance, that our engineers are competent and confident in diagnosing and fixing that equipment.
Rightio. And Nick, for Advantage, what do you think the ideal attributes of a supplier's after-sales service should be?
I think all the guys hit a lot of the points I was going to mention, particularly Paul. For me, it's about product knowledge, training. Most of the times we get equipment failure, dare I say, it's down to user error. We get a lot of that. So if we could get more training on a technical basis from the manufacturer, we could often stop the repair in its tracks. It would never get to the manufacturers because we'd often be able to say to customers, no, look, guys, you need to do it this way or that way. So, yeah, I'd echo everyone's thoughts, but just to emphasise on that.
So on to the next question then. So how proactive should a supplier be about garnering operator customer feedback following a sale? Should they go directly to the end user? As the supplier representative on the panel here, Ian, what do you think?
I think it depends on who owns the customer, really. Obviously, as manufacturers have set up, and Hobart probably the last to the game of the dealer route to market. It's essentially the dealer's customer. I think we would be guided by the dealer as to what level of support they need. We would be hoping, obviously, that they're making their own follow-ups themselves, and if there are issues that are identified, then we can address them and support them, whether it be technical or training. And I think that's kind of we would kind of leave it with the dealer to steer us. But we're more than we have an extensive regional sales team. So we're there to support, which is why we can provide sort of the training levels that we do. So as I say, we'd be guided by the dealer.
Rightio. Nick, I'll come to you first. So would you appreciate suppliers going to the end users for feedback on after sales and service?
I've got to agree with you. It's got to be led by the dealer. I always encourage manufacturers to get involved, but only at a level that I think is right for my particular customer. Sometimes it can confuse the issue. Customer buys from me, so I would say not.
Rightio. Dean, how about you? Would you agree with those sentiments?
Yeah, I think generally the ownership of the customer is a little bit grey sometimes, and I think it's important that the supplier and the dealer are real clear on this, because principally the dealer is the person that sold the equipment. Therefore, the relationship fundamentally exists between the dealer and the customer. I know why the manufacturers wish to engage with the end user, and it makes perfect sense, but frankly, it interferes with what we're trying to do. And I think often provides a conflict. I know it's being achieved, or it's attempting to achieve something that, is beneficial and advantageous to all. But I actually think often it can create a little bit of confusion, a little bit of conflict, because, the dealer may be saying something slightly different to the manufacturer for whatever reason. And then typically the manufacturer's view is always the one that is believed because of who they are. And, I just feel that in the industry generally, there is a lack of clarity around who owns the customer. Hence, I think it should always be the dealer that is looking for that feedback principally, and then only feeding it up the chain to the manufacturer as and when. That can be good and bad feedback, by the way. I don't think it's all negative necessarily. There's a lot of instances where it's positive, but I do think it's a dealer's responsibility.
Rightio. And how about you, Paul? Would you say suppliers stay away from the end user?
Well, we work in partnership with suppliers and manufacturers. We wouldn't sell anything that we wouldn't be prepared to stand next to and recommend. So, I'd say I agree with both Dean and Nick in that the first port of call should be the dealer or distributor. I do think that the manufacturers and suppliers would have a duty of care to make sure that their brand's being protected. So they really should only be proactive or getting involved if they think their reputation or brand is being called in disrepute. Somebody continually installing a piece of equipment incorrectly, etc., or something that might put somebody's health and safety at risk. That's really the only time that I believe they should get proactively involved. We'd welcome a proactive relationship with the manufacturer and supplier and talk to us. We do after sales checks. We do randomly from head office get audited on customer feedback, and I think it's never been easier, frankly. In this digital age, you can do a Survey Monkey, etc. It's very easy to do, and it's very important to do it also. So I agree with Dean and Nick in that I think it's the primary responsibility of the distributor and the dealer. They should work in tandem with the supplier, and really the supplier manufacturer should only really be contacting that customer in conjunction with their partner dealer.
I think I would add, though, I mean, obviously there are certain, particularly whether it's large project dealers, where they don't have an after-sales service support, and really it's a tendered situation. They've won the job, they've fitted the kitchen, and then it's kind of left to its own devices. Now, it may be covered by an FM company, but I think there are circumstances where we as the manufacturer would want to protect that brand, as the guys have said, and you may see us, we've also got a large service organisation to support the Hobart product, and so I think there are times, but I think generally, particularly the independent customer, we would expect the dealer to follow it up.
Yeah, so just kind of leading on from that, then, how often should dealers, say, as you mostly agree that it should be dealers rather than suppliers, but how often should they stay in touch with operators following a sale? I'll come to Ian first and then go to the dealers afterwards.
Again, I think particularly when it's that independent, the customer, you're looking, for that customer as a customer for life, and it's not just that initial maybe appliance or kitchen that you fitted out. It's the ongoing life of the kitchen and to build a long life customer. So it's really much up to them how they determine. But I think we would certainly be saying, as equipment comes out of warranty, we would be then expecting the product to be, the customer to be approached about ongoing maintenance, and not doing it on the cheap really, and just firefighting fix, proactive, preemptive maintenance where parts are even changed before they've worn out, and therefore they're kept going. So I'd hand it back to the guys. They're probably better at saying how they should be keeping in touch. Obviously my past life, I know exactly how we would have approached it. So
yeah, let's come to you, Paul, first. How often would you say Bratt Brothers then keeps in touch with end users after a sale?
It should be often enough. You shouldn't be, there's two things on communications and contacts. Too little's a bad thing, and too much can be a bad thing also. They say that there's some statistic that it's 9 times harder to go out and find a new customer than it is to actually retain an existing customer. So, we're a heritage business. We celebrated 75 years as a catering equipment distributor this year, and we've relied heavily over that time on repeat custom and recommendation. So it is a vital thing that you get that contact correct. I would suggest that obviously the project or piece of equipment is handed over. All jobs are different, from a one-off piece of equipment replacement right the way through to a £1 million plus project. They're going to be different, right? But I think Ian picked up on a really important point there, and that is that the account management side of things, we'd be looking to our team to actually have that ongoing relationship with the client, check in with them, make sure that they're happy with it. We've alluded to training earlier. Often, especially in a scheme, you're showing a new team, new equipment, you're showing them a wear-washer, a combination oven, a fryer, refrigeration. You might give them an O&M manual digitally and physically, but there's a lot of information there to retain. So actually there's an opportunity to do an introduction at the very start on the equipment, but maybe after 3 months go in and do a little bit more of enhanced training, maybe in conjunction with the manufacturers, especially on sophisticated or complicated pieces of equipment. Combination ovens spring to mind. Are they getting the most from it? Are they using it correctly? Are they using it most efficiently? But there's also an opportunity then for companies that offer service and maintenance as well as just selling the equipment. And Ian's spot on with, you know, it is a really good idea to follow up 6 to 9 months after the project has started, because it gives you enough time to start the dialogue with them regarding a service and maintenance or preventative planned maintenance contract. It shows you care. We'd like to think that we do care, and we'd like to be proactive rather than reactive in terms of heading off problems before they've even happened. So that's our approach to it.
Good stuff. Nick, how about Advantage? How often do you like to keep in contact with your customers?
I think it depends on the nature of the customer you're dealing with. In my experience, professional chefs, people that really know what they're doing, they would find constant contact irritating and in their way. But the guy who runs Pete's Cafe, or has come from an insurance background and this is his first project, you know, he wants contact every day. So it's about managing who you've got and the time you have, notwithstanding the service agreements that you get in touch with. So it's always led by the customer for me.
Rightio. And Dean at Miller's, how often do you like to keep in contact with your customers after a sale?
To echo what everybody has said, the customer profile is really what drives it. It's very different for different customers, you know, as the guys have said. I think what's important and is probably lacking a little bit again in the industry from someone that isn't from the industry, I can maybe see this pretty clearly sometimes. The lack of good CRM is quite challenging because, you know, in previous industries, we've had the same challenges. You know, what's the touch frequency? What's your contact strategy? What's your retention? Blah, blah, blah. All of that's pretty important stuff. Never more so in this industry because of the wide breadth of profile of customer that you have, too much or too little, which is it? You know, we're wrestling with that right now. We know that certain customers need quite high touch. We know that some customers, you know, you sell them something and frankly, you know, you might not speak or hear from them again for another 12, 18 months. Neither of those two things necessarily satisfy me because I think you've got to have a consistent approach to how you tackle all of that profile of customers. So it's not easy. It's not easy. And I think it's pretty much an ongoing battle that many of us will face for quite some time.
Indeed, indeed. So, say at the point where you've got some customer feedback, I mean, how much would that influence the service that you would provide? Ian, I'll come to you. How much does customer feedback influence what Hobart progresses with?
Well, it's whether it be customer or dealer, you know, in that chain of supply, because, you know, we can have feedback and it's very important because if there's product issues, we need to generally identify where they're coming from. And, you know, there's a catalogue of standard format, you know, it's water conditions or it's installation. I know some of the guys won't like the fact that it might be installation led because that would be what the manufacturer would normally say. But, you know, it's really understanding exactly where the issues are, if there are issues, and not only the negatives, but some of the positives. From that, you know, you'd like to know that people feel the equipment really is enhancing their operation and that what we can do, or potentially identifying, again, training needs. Might be, you know, we need to put in somebody there from our culinary team to go and help work with them on the equipment. So, it's about, we want a satisfied customer at the end, the operator. And again, word of mouth and the fact that people are satisfied is generally what we can use as a point of reference to gain more sales. So the more information we get back, the better. If it's technical, we can feed it back to the factory and they can pick up, whether it be a design-led or a parts, supply issue. So feedback's very important, and from all aspects of the supply chain, the route to market.
Okay, so from the dealer side of things, Nick, I'll start with you. Advantage, how much does customer feedback influence the service that you guys provide?
I agree most with what Ian said, and we just add that good or bad response from customers, there's a response. So responses have to be dealt with quickly. We all have customers that we like dealing with, so they always tend to get a slightly better response. But yeah, good or bad, don't mind what the response is, we'll always deal with it.
Rightio. Dean, at Miller's, how much does operator feedback then influence how you provide your services going forwards?
For us, operator feedback is pretty influential in terms of how we choose to navigate our business. And I think as a smaller provider, we are, we have to do something immediately. Our speed of response is quick. And I think when you're a certain size, you've got that ability to be nimble. And I think you've got the ability to make decisions quickly and enact outcomes that are generally positive for the customer. I think what's quite interesting when we kind of reflect on what Ian said, often when we talk about feedback that comes to us as a dealer, it isn't necessarily always about product. I don't feel that I can feedback too much to, for example, Hobart or Rationale about their product and expect them to do anything. We're a very small part of the overall picture, I get that. But I do think feedback from us as a customer to the manufacturers in terms of how quickly we get responded to, how quickly we get feedback, how quickly a delivery mistake is rectified, is something that can be done significantly better than it is at the moment. I don't expect Hobart to change the way their warewashers work. I do expect them to think about a different logistics company if they fail to keep delivering on time. For me, I don't think the manufacturers are particularly keen to hear much feedback along those lines. They will hear it and then do their own thing anyway, because seldom do these things change, in my experience, and yet they continue to persist and give us as a dealer and ultimately the customer something to be challenged over. So yeah, I think that, again, it's a big topic, but I think there are sections in it that we do learn from. I think there are sections in it that people don't learn from.
Right. I mean, Ian, did you want to kind of respond to those points on behalf of Hobart?
I think I should really. I mean, I get Dean's point, and like I say, I mean, I've sat on their side of the table as well, so I speak with experience from that side. But I think with regard to Hobart service, probably is handling somewhere in the region of about 120,000 calls a year. So there is a volume issue there, in as much as how capable or able we are to respond to everybody. And I think and we work in an industry that needs a response now, because generally it's fallen over when it's at their busiest time, and therefore there's highlighted frustration. And Dean, as your customer, is going to be shouting at you. You're trying to get a response from us and not getting that. So I fully understand what you're saying, but I think some of certainly speaking on behalf of Hobart, there's been, over the last 4 years since I've been here, some significant changes within the structure within Hobart's service organisation, and our reaction times and customer support has been developed. You talk about logistics. We sacked our logistics company and employed a new logistics company because of issues that you may have experienced. So I think it's important. I think it's important to give us the feedback, and it's important to know who you should give it to. I think so that it's actually listened to. And without it, I think you shouldn't feel that, regardless of how big a business you are, that it's being ignored. I think we all need feedback to improve ourselves.
Right, yeah. Paul, I'm going to give you the last word on this. So again, from the points that have already been discussed, how influential is operator feedback on your own operations at Grapp Brothers, and then how much do you then feedback down the supply chain to kind of influence what they do too? Well,
it's started quite positively. Let's finish positively. This is this for me is very important. Number one, both from the operator to us and from us to the manufacturer. Again, it is a direct line, and I think it's a win-win situation, because we all want positive feedback, right? We love that, because it can be used for case studies or testimonials, references. In this world of social media posts, it's very quick to get good news out there. But if you are truly committed to continual improvement, or have a desire to just get better and better, which you have to do these days, otherwise you end up losing your market share to competitors that are getting it right. It's even more important to have that feedback when it's not gone 100% perfect, because at least that affords you the opportunity to hear what's gone wrong and put it right for the next time. We have I can't even guess at the amount of manufacturers and suppliers that we deal with, because some of our clients have their own peculiar people that they insist that we use, but there has been many suppliers and manufacturers that we've built up great working relationships with over many years. So we have review meetings with our manufacturers and our suppliers, especially our preferred suppliers, the people that we work most often with, and I think that's the forum in which we can give them the feedback to what we're hearing from our customer or what we're experiencing ourselves as a distributor. And again, then the onus is on them. They either listen to what we're saying and take the requisite actions to make sure that any issues are dealt with, or they don't listen. And if they don't listen, we will be moving towards maybe a new preferred supplier within a certain product sector. So I think it's very, very important that feedback, and I think the communication then up further back to the manufacturers it's a responsibility of ours, because again, just like we like to retain our customers, we like to retain our suppliers as well. It's better the devil you know sometimes.
Right, yeah, I think on that note, we are now out of time. So thank you very much all for joining us this week, and join us again soon for another episode of Market Talk.